Hi, this is Lewis Ball. It's The Colors of Prague. This is season 5, episode 5. Agusa, psychedelic jam, Prague from Sweden. Yes. Relatively new to the scene, they formed in 2013, it's about 10 years ago, and practiced and jammed in the village of Agusa in Sweden before taking its name. Initially a foursome, with members on guitar, organ, bass, and drums. They added a flute player to the sound over time. So, what is their sound? What do they sound like? While popular Swedish band, the Flower Kings, wears its progressive and pop influences proudly and are quite the proficient band in churning out multi-disc albums. Other Swedish bands like Anglagard appear to be more psychedelic with a foot in psychedelia, as well as using old folk instruments. Anecdoten is also into a heavier form of prog, but with ties to bands like King Crimson and their use of mellotrons and moogs. And Anecdoten has a bit of a darker uh, kind of psychedelic folk sound. Anecdoten are another thing entirely. But is bringing us to Agusa, a melodic collision of instrumental sounds. I hear Ennio Morricone, landscapes of Italian 1960s cinema soundtracks. There's some dynamite organ playing that fans of Brian Auger will appreciate. And the guitarist has one foot in the 60s era psychedelic sounds of Jorma Kaukonen and the other in the history of Swedish bands uh, who really into reverb and distortion, and it's pretty amazing. Um, they're eclectic, and they while others may try to update and change their sound, they just kind of adapted their sound. They might appear to be sometimes experimental in their approach to things, but once they added the flute player, female flute player, by the way, they also added hints of focus and Jethro Tull to the mix. Now, can you imagine all that? Their debut, the self-released Hogtid, Hodtid, came out in 2014. But by the time of TVA, in 2015, they added Jenny Horritus on flute, and the sound really opened up. And that one, despite only contains two tracks, one is 20 minutes long and the other one is 19 minutes long. The self-released album was licensed to Laser's Edge in the US, if anyone was curious about that. Agusa, released in 2017, consists of four long songs of about 10 minutes each, and one shorter one clocking in at about 5 minutes each. 5 minutes, sorry. Agusa's Ecstasis, live in Rome, was released in 2018. Finds the band in fine form performing in Rome, Italy in the spring of 2018. That one's a little different. It consists of five songs, nearly 70 minutes of music, and it's compelling and it's hypnotic. And if it were not for the between song audience applause, you wouldn't think, you would just think it was another studio album or a compilation. I mean, well recorded. They actually have two other live albums, but I really prefer this one. Prima Materia, released in 2023, continues the trend. It's a fine collection of music, four tunes, but I felt it kind of sounded a lot like the previous album, which came out after the live album 2021's En Anon Vald, seems to dial back a bit on the stoner rock psychedelic sound, and it hints to a more folksy kind of thing. And the tone and the focus leanings are more pronounced on that 2021 album. So then I jumped, circling back to Prima Materia, released in 2023, kind of continues the trend of that one. Pardon me. Noir, yes, like film noir, released in the spring of 2024, is really something. Features 15 songs of varying length, not one over 5 minutes. And it's not singing nor spoken word, but what sounds like snippets of dialogue. Now, Noir was supposedly a soundtrack to a feature film, to a film. I don't know if it's a feature film or an indie or what, but it's a Swedish film. And I'm curious to see what the accompanying visuals are like, because as a soundtrack, it's a really strong recording. I assumed it was intended as a soundtrack. That's from what I've been told. There's not much information in the disc itself, but they do retain their core sound. So they retain their core sound. And, it's funny, as prolific as Agusa are, I've no doubt there'll be at least another album coming from them very soon. So here's a band a lot of you might not be aware of, but maybe some of you are. Is the music on YouTube worth checking out? So yeah, it's psychedelic guitar, very hypnotic sounding, very mellow, and it's very visual. The whole thing, their music is very visual. And I mentioned Morricone and some of his soundtrack music, the Italian westerns and the crime films, and there are other Italian composers that came to my mind. And then once the flute player joined, suddenly we have this tall and sometimes focus thing going on there, and it makes them all much more quite interesting. Should they ever adapt to writing songs with a singer, I don't know how that would work out. Right now, they're pretty much primarily an instrumental band with a lot of recordings, more than just the ones I've spoken of, I believe, because there's are two other live albums out there, CDs. So anyway, that's a Agusa. I hope I described them in a way where you could think, oh, that's interesting. I might want to check that out. And as I said, go on YouTube. I'm not shilling for YouTube, but go on YouTube and throw some of these their name and some of these album titles in and see what happens. That's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it.